Let's talk triggers. This is Alan with Quarter Horse Arms in Snow Camp, North Carolina. Today's episode, we're going to talk about different kinds of triggers. And some of the triggers the ATF actually is kind of hot and bothered over. But let's talk about a couple of the ones right now that are actually legal. And we're going to look at three basic kinds of triggers: single stage, adjustable, and two-stage. Single stage trigger is your regular old everyday trigger. You pull it up until a break point, and when that happens, the gun goes bang. A two-stage trigger has that first part where you draw the trigger, and then you kind of hit, for lack of a better term, you hit this wall, basically. It's a stiff break point, and at that point, as soon as you cross that point, the gun fires. So you don't have to worry about, have you drawn up enough slack, is the gun ready to fire? You've pulled up to it to a point, and you know immediately it's going to fire when you go past that wall or past that break point. Advantages and disadvantages, sure. They cost a few more bucks. Some people like them, some people don't. It's kind of like, should I have one? Well, I don't know. It's, do you like PCs or Macintosh? Do you like Fords versus Chevys? Does it really matter? No, it's a preference thing. A lot of the competition shooters, like in the 3-gun range competitions, a lot of those shooters, for example, like the two-stage trigger because they can pull it right up to a point and they know exactly when it's going to fire. Now, is that true of other triggers? Yeah, it really is, but when you hit that multi-stage trigger, you know exactly when it's going to happen. You don't have to feel for it. And what I mean by feel for it is pull the trigger until you feel that slight resistance. If you're in a competition, obviously you want to go a little bit better than look and feel and go with something a little tougher. Now, are there variable triggers? Yeah. And what I mean by variable is you can adjust the setting for how many pounds of pressure it takes to fire it. A lot of the triggers on the ARs, for example, you're looking at 7 to 9 pounds of pull for mil spec, and that's military specification. So that's just your run-of-the-mill everyday trigger. So a lot of them are around 7 pounds or 6 to 8 pounds. A lot of the pocket pistols, the pull might be as hard as 9 pounds because there's no safety, and since it's already cocked, there's less chance of a negligent or accidental discharge. Okay, and that brings us to the last three kinds of triggers. The first one is called a binary trigger. It's kind of a neat thing. They were designed originally by Franklin Armory. And the binary trigger is you pull the trigger, it goes bang. You let go of the trigger, it goes bang. So by a pure definition from the ATF, it would theoretically be classed as a machine gun, which according to them is more than one round fires for each pull of the trigger. Right now they have basically stated it's not a machine gun. Is it kind of in a gray area? Yeah. Is it something the ATF might go looking at in the future? I guess. If you're looking at rough cost, you're probably looking at about $300. Most people can put it in themselves if you have some basic tools, or, a gun dealer can do it. And even Franklin Armory will do it too. I don't know if they still do it, but you could actually send them the gun, and for a fee, which included the shipping back and forth, they would put it in for you. It's really not a big job. It's more of, a little bit of a pain in the butt, no big deal. All right, so the final two triggers, and these are the ones the ATF has actually been confiscating. One is made by Rare Breed, which is they make what's called an FRT, a forced reset trigger, and the other is by Big Daddy, their WOT, or wide open trigger. Frankly, I don't know much about that one at all. The forced reset trigger, at least the one from Rare Breed, one of the things that as I stumble over words, the way this works is kind of sort of like an automatic weapon. If you were to look at an M4 or an M16 or something like that, if you compare it side by side with an AR-15, you'll notice at the back end towards the handle, if you open up the lower receiver, there's some extra milling, and there's actually a third pin, and it holds a little flappy thing of metal and a spring. And that's the auto sear. And that works with a hammer designed for automatic weapons, and it works with an automatic bolt carrier group. So for an automatic bolt carrier group, there's basically an extra notch cut out of it, or a chunk of metal cut out of it, so that if you're holding the trigger down, the auto sear or the bolt carrier group can travel through the auto sear and keep firing. From what I can tell, it looks like the forced reset trigger has a little flappy thing built into it, and it still uses an automatic bolt carrier group. Are those things legal to get? Absolutely. There's nothing wrong with that kind of bolt carrier group. Now, obviously, since I'll give you my disclaimer a little late, is check with your state and local laws. Excuse me. Now, is the ATF saying they're machine guns? No, they are not. They are saying, however, that they are machine gun components. And having made that determination, they've gone after dealers that have been selling them. They've gone after people owning them. And one thing that's been going on this year, there was a kid. It was actually a 21-year-old college student who was selling stuff on Gunbroker. And so he was selling everything from optics, trigger, groups, rail systems, things like that. He was actually paying his way through college, or helping pay his way through college, by selling on Gunbroker. He got raided, and they confiscated a whole bunch of stuff, including things that they should not have taken, like optics. Those have nothing to do with a gun per se. Confiscated all his electronics, and for a while everybody was going, hey, this kid has turned over all of his information to the ATF, and the reality is he did not. They think the information could have been gotten from the shipping company he used, and it's also possible that, given the nature of what gunbroker.com does, is they obviously selling guns or brokering gun sales, they've got to keep pretty exhaustive records. Now, is it possible they gave up those records? I suppose. Somehow I doubt they would do it willingly, but maybe there was a subpoena. This poor kid who goes, when they confiscated all his stuff, he said that he would not give them the password, so presumably they hacked into his system. And, this poor kid's place got raided. On Gunbroker, he went by Rifle Remedy 2000, I think it was. And a lot of people were blaming him initially because a lot of the ATF interactions focused around all these triggers sold by this one kid. And they were claiming he'd sold thousands of them. Everything I've been able to find is he was nowhere near thousands. However, he did sell a lot. And if they hacked his records, because he did keep sales records, they knew who they were going after. And in most cases, when they found out who the person was, they went to them and said, you may be in possession of an illegal component. And so in some cases, the people that had these triggers had tried them and took them out. They didn't like the way they worked, or it didn't, maybe for lack of a better term, it didn't fit their style of shooting. It's kind of like bump stocks. It's a cool thing, but is it something you really want to have? So a lot of people turned them over willingly. People that did not, I think, had to sign an affidavit saying it had been destroyed. I'm not sure what's involved with that. But at any rate, all this kid was doing was trying to make some money selling triggers. And it turns out they went after those triggers. And they also picked up a few other gun kits. And I'm going to talk about those in a kind of a ghost gun episode that'll be posted in the upcoming week or so, I think. But in the meantime, you have several trigger selections. The ones that are the most common are the single stage, the two stage, and the variable tension one. And some of them fit specific guns. The ones that are designed for ARs will pretty much fit any AR. And if they don't, they'll tell you exactly what you need to have in it. All right, and as always, I look forward to hearing from you, comments, questions, topics you want to hear talked about, or even if you want to have a live conversation. You can reach us by phone at 919-808-6480. That's also for texting. You can email at info@quarterhorsearms.com. The website is quarterhorse.com. And this is Alan with Quarter Horse Arms in Snow Camp, North Carolina. You guys be safe out there.